Good morning, Facebook friends. Today I wanted to talk about the matrimonial home in divorce. What is the matrimonial home? So that's the home that you live in while you're married. And the question becomes, what's going to happen now that I'm getting a divorce? Who gets the house? How does it work? Who pays who what? It can be a really scary thought, and it can be a really emotional issue for you because this is the home that you were in during the marriage. Maybe your children were born in that home, and it's really hard to think about what's about to happen. And this is one of the issues that we really need to step back and think about in terms of rational thought as opposed to letting the emotions lead us, because sometimes the emotions can lead us astray and have us make decisions that might not be the best decisions. So it can often be really helpful to speak to somebody in the divorce field, whether that's a divorce coach, a family law lawyer, or somebody else that, a financial professional, to really get the information that you need before you make that decision. So what are the things that we need to think about? First of all, it's important to know your rights. So always obtain legal advice so you know what's involved. You know what your rights are, you know what your obligations are, you know what the risks may be. But generally, not always, but generally, both people are entitled to an equal share in the value of the matrimonial home. So depending, it may or may not be that somebody's name is on title to that home, but that may or may not actually matter when it comes to family law. So really important to discuss that with your lawyer so you know exactly how the law applies to you in your unique situation. So what are the options when it comes to the home? You basically have two options. Either you sell the home and you split the proceeds, or one of you buys the other person's share in the matrimonial home. So basically, if the house is worth $750,000 and there's a $250,000 mortgage on it, and the net value of the home is $500,000, then one of you is going to pay the other person $250,000 to buy out that person's share in the home. And now the person who bought out the home owns the home fully, and then you fill out the paperwork with the real estate lawyer and with your family law lawyer and make sure that everything's settled in terms of one of you now owning the home. And another thing to remember, you're going to want to speak to a financial professional because there are tax implications, in terms of your principal residence, etc. You want to speak to somebody that knows, so you make sure that you deal with the paperwork appropriately. But let's step back and think about making that decision. How do you decide whether you're going to sell the house or you're going to buy out the other person's share in the home? Things you want to think about are, what are you going to do with the children? Is it your preference that they stay in the same school, that you stay in the same area, or is that something that you guys can discuss and come to another agreement? It could be that where you're living currently is really expensive. So if the other person has to move, it might be that they can't afford to get something nearby, which puts a whole new issue in play in terms of the children and their schooling. So you're going to want to have that discussion with each other and be realistic about what each of you can afford. It could be that both of you can't afford to continue in that area, and so you both want to consider moving to an area that's not as expensive so that you can afford and live comfortably, and therefore move the children's schooling. So there's a lot of things to think about. So if we go back to the home now, in terms of selling the home and both of you leaving, or one of you buying the other person out, you really need to understand your finances, right? You need to understand, what can you afford? So if you're the person who wants to buy out your partner, can you actually afford to do that? One of the first things you should do is go to the bank and find out what they're willing to loan you in terms of getting a mortgage. Because if you can't get the amount of the mortgage that you need to buy out your partner, that point is moot. Then it's not really something that you even need to go into discussion, because it can't happen, unfortunately. But if you do qualify for the amount that you need, then you want to think about, okay, even though I qualify for this, will I be financially comfortable if I buy out this person's share in the home? Like, is that going to eat up most of your income each month and you're stressed about just your regular life expenses? Or does that leave you a lot of room so that you're comfortable? You can do what you normally do. It doesn't impact your budget. You can take the kids where you need to take them. You can still afford their extracurriculars. You really want to think about your budget. What is the budget now? How are you living now? And what do you want it to be when you split? Naturally, when you split, everything gets more expensive. You're living on a single income. You need to think through what your current budget is and what your current expenses are and what you foresee your expenses to be when you're living on your own and caring for your children. So speaking to a professional, financial professional that can walk you through all of those things that you need to think about is really helpful. Don't do it alone. Get the help that you need so you can understand where you sit. And that will help you make the right decision in terms of, do I buy out my spouse's share in the home, or should I let them buy me out, or should we just sell the home? So in terms of determining the value of the home, if you were going to buy them out, how do you do it? People use a couple of different strategies. You can get an actual assessment of like a valuation of the home, and that can run several $100s. You guys can decide together on which professional you want to use, and then decide that that's the value you're going to go with. Sometimes people can't agree on the professional, and so it ends up the wife gets one professional and the husband gets another. Just think through that, because it becomes very expensive. The other thing that you can do is go to a real estate agent and get a market assessment. And often they'll actually do that for free. And so it might not be as official as a valuation of the home, but it may do the job for you. You guys have to decide what makes sense to you and what you're willing to spend and what you don't want to spend. And so with the market assessment from a real estate agent, you could go get 2 or 3 of them. And basically the real estate agent will come into your house. They'll tell you what they think your house will probably sell for given other houses in the area that are similar to yours. And then there'll be some plus or minuses. So if your house is really great in terms of renovation, maybe the real estate agent will think that your house will sell for a little bit more. If your house is really outdated and needs some work, maybe they'll think that your house will sell for less. So if you get 2 or 3 of those, you can decide to take an average value of the 2 or 3 of those assessments that you got done and make that what you determine the fair value of the home is. Now, when it comes to mediation versus going to court, in court, all the judge can do is order a sale of the home. In mediation, you guys can decide, does one of you buy the other out? A judge cannot order that one of you buys the other person out. So keep that in mind in terms of resolution and how you want to go about resolution and how easy you want to make this process for yourselves. Mediation is always a better route because it gives you flexibility on determining how you're going to move forward. So now if you guys have determined that one of you will buy the other out, you want to think through how that's going to happen. Like, does the person have the funds available? Is it as simple as them being able to get a refinancing of the mortgage, or are they going to have some issues? And is there flexibility on timing of paying? So if I'm the wife and I'm going to buy out my husband, does the husband have flexibility on allowing me to pay him maybe in installments, or does he want that payment up front? It's really up to the 2 of you in mediation to determine a solution that works for your family. And again, I keep repeating it, but it's so true. This is the beauty of mediation, because you guys are in charge. You're in charge of the solution. You're in charge of your life moving forward. You're in charge of deciding what kind of settlement you guys will make with each other so that you can move forward peacefully, constructively, and in the best interests of the children. So what I want you to do is go to your lawyer and find out what you need to know about the sale of the matrimonial home. Speak to real estate agents. Determine what the value would be. And very importantly, go to the bank and find out what you're entitled to. Like, what can you qualify for based on your income in terms of a mortgage? Because if you can't qualify for a mortgage, you may have to consider renting. And then that brings up other issues in terms of, where are you going to rent? Is there something available to you nearby? Or are you going to be forced to move out of the area? In which case, again, the 2 of you need to have that discussion. What's this going to look like moving forward? And Do your budget. Always prepare a budget. You should be doing that anyways. Sit down and think through what your expenses are currently and what are they going to be moving forward. How are they going to increase or decrease? What's going to change in your lifestyle as a result of the divorce that will impact your finances? You want to make sure that you're leaving yourself room to breathe, right? So wherever you're going to live, make sure you know what that monthly expense is going to be, whether or not it's a mortgage payment or it's a rent expense. Make sure that there's room for you to be able to live the lifestyle that you need to live. So that's essentially what happens with the matrimonial home. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is key. Always find out the information you need before you go into making a decision, because you want to make the best decision for you, your children, and your family. Have a great Friday afternoon and enjoy your weekend.